is the Wall Street Image Podcast. My name is Micah Sanford. Thank you so much for tuning in on today. Listen, it's been a while since we've been on. I got the studio remodeled and it's finally looking like I wanted it to look. So that's why we've been away for quite some time. But listen, 2023 is going to be filled with new content, and we're super excited to be exploring different career fields, different career opportunities for young people, and just talking to some professionals in their different industries, those who have had success in various sectors, so they can tell you about their journey, how they got to where they are, and hopefully inspire you to become what it is that you're looking to be. Today, I have attorney Damon Stevenson with me. Damon, how you doing today?
Well, Mike, it's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So Damon Stevenson actually happens to be not only an attorney here in Jackson, Mississippi, not only a judge here locally, but he's also my cousin. He's one of my favorite people, and so I'm excited to have him here. We grew up together, our mothers, our sisters, and so, we've spent countless hours together, growing up, slept in his bed. He, taught me karate, things like that. We've had a lot of great times together, and just seeing where he is now as not only a business owner and some of the other things that we're going to get into, I'm excited to have our guest on today. So we're going to just jump right into it and talk about your upbringing and how it kind of landed you to where you are right now.
Well, I am the third of 5 children. I was born to William and Patricia Stevenson, and you indicated that we live right next to our grandmother. And so my entire life, pretty much until I went to college, we always lived right next to our grandmother. And she was very, as you know, she was very involved in helping raising us. And at times, my mother was a single mother. And so during those time periods, grandmother would step in and make sure that we had what we needed. And I had a mother who worked really hard to keep us on the right track. And so I was raised with a strong sense of family. And, growing up, we were very close. And even to this day, our family is still very close.
Yeah, you say that. And family is something that's very important. Why is it so important to have a family structure? We grew up, our grandmother had an open door policy. The door was never locked. We could just walk in and, we all kind of convened at grandmother's house, so to speak. And you don't really see a lot of that in today's society.
Well, and I think that's part of what's wrong with society. I think family is your first support system. And the thing about family is it's a system of love and unconditional support. They're there for you. Like you said, grandmother always had an open door policy, right? You could show up at grandmother's house any time. And grandmother's house for us, it was kind of the meeting place.
Yeah.
Not only would you see grandmother, but you would see the rest of the family.
Right.
And grandmother always had something to eat.
Always.
Right? She always had a cooked meal in. Grandmother may not necessarily know who I was coming, but she had cooked enough for everybody.
Right.
And so, I think that's one of the things that we are genuinely missing. And we had what I call, real grandmothers. When our grandmother cooked a meal, it wasn't gonna be rotel or tacos. It was gonna be a real meal.
You wasn't gonna have to eat again when you went home.
right. Even when you were at grandmother's house, I cannot really remember even spending time at grandmother's house and eating cereal for breakfast, because most of the time, even for breakfast, grandmother was gonna cook. At lunchtime, you weren't gonna eat just sandwiches. Grandmother was gonna cook a meal, and so that really helped me appreciate, family and the role that family plays, because grandmother was a babysitter. She was just, she was everything.
Right.
And she was the, the foundation of the family, and she kind of kept everybody together.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked about, you being an attorney, but what was your first actual job? Well, before, we see people where they are now, but what was your actual first job?
Well, that's interesting you say that, because just yesterday, part of my role is I'm a municipal court judge for the city of Byram, and I was on the bench yesterday in Byram. I was talking to a young man, and he was saying, he had just went back to work, and I said, well, why had you not been working? And he said, well, I fell out at my last job because it got too hot. And I said, what job was it? He said, well, I was working at Raising Cane's. And I said, this is a different generation because, throughout high school and college, I worked at Taco Bell. And I even was, at one point, was the weekend manager. And so that was my first job that helped me really appreciate, customer service, interacting with people, and really gave me a work ethic.
And so when did you actually know that you wanted to become an attorney? Did that come early on? Did you always have ambitions to want to become an attorney, or when did that kind of take place?
Well, I'll say this, when you're a kid, you say, when I grow up, I want to be an attorney, I want to be a doctor, and over the course of life, it just kind of falls to the back of your mind. And when I was in college at Tougaloo, I appreciate the foundation and the support I got at Tougaloo. Tougaloo does an excellent job of not just preparing you for a career, but I believe preparing you for life. And so it was my senior year, and one of the requirements at Tougaloo College is that you have to take some advanced tests to go to either graduate or professional school, or else you won't graduate. And so my advisor recommended that I take the LSAT. And so when you take the LSAT and you score decent, then they make you meet with the pre-law advisor.
Right.
And then I remember meeting with the pre-law advisor, and the pre-law advisor said, hey, look, these 3 law schools that if you apply to, you'll get in with your grades and your GPA.
Wow.
And so once you apply and you get accepted and you tell your family that you've been accepted to law school, you're pretty much going to law school regardless of what you want to do.
Right.
Because actually my intent was I was an economics and accounting major in college, and my intent was to go and either get an MBA or a master's of accounting.
Okay.
But after I got accepted to law school, it just kind of unfolded from there.
Wow. So you mentioned, after graduation, you chose Tougaloo. What specifically about Tougaloo, out of, not just colleges here in Mississippi, but all around the nation, what made you make Tougaloo your choice?
Well, I got a full-paid scholarship to Tougaloo.
Well, that's
so
that's an incentive.
That helped. I was torn about where to go because I applied for a couple different schools. Remember applying to Mississippi State, being accepted to Mississippi State. I even applied for some colleges out of town. My mother really wanted us to stay close, and so that was involved in my decision. And then once I viewed the campus, and one thing that I appreciate about HBCUs is it really is a big family.
Yeah.
And just the foundation and the support you get, and just the interaction with positive African Americans. I was just kind of hooked once I saw it.
Well, that's awesome. And a lot of times you see young kids go off to college, and particularly when even when you're close to home, that kind of gives you some type of a route. But what kind of kept you focused throughout your academic career? Saying that I have a goal in mind. I don't just want to go to college just to go, but I want to make sure that I leave here with adequate skills and understanding so that I can get a career.
Well, I always remember and reflect on something. During the first week of college, they have, as you know, orientation. Orientation at Tougaloo was just different older faculty, staff members, and students talking to students. And I remember one of the faculty member really drilling on the fact that everybody does not graduate. But if you hang with people who are serious about their study, it increases the likelihood that you'll graduate. And so I was fortunate is that I early on connected with a group of people who were pretty serious about their college pursuits and pretty serious about graduating. And so we became a support system, one for another, encouraging each other to stay on the right path. Then another thing that helped me was staying close to home allowed me to maintain connection with my church.
Yes.
Right. And so the church, as you know, our church is essentially an extension of our family.
Right.
And so they were very supportive. And when you have people asking, how are you doing? Everything is coming along okay. And those people just making sure you stay on track.
You got people in your business.
All of that. And I was listening to an older lady talk about that. And she was saying, she was saying how the new generation, y'all don't like for us to ask, when y'all get married, when y'all gonna have children, when you gonna do this. She said, but people staying in your business help you stay on track, right? They're a reminder that your life is not just about you, but you are where you are because the community has invested in you. And in return, you have an obligation to the community. W.B. Du Bois talked about that. There was a whole concept of the talented 10th. Right. We're college educated. Our grandmother was not college education.
Right.
But the sacrifices she made allowed us to become college educated. And so as a result of that, we understand that our success is not just our success, it's a community success.
Absolutely. So shortly after graduating from college, you took the bar exam, of course, and how did that kind of transpire? I know, so many people are kind of intimidated by the bar exam because that's kind of like the standard of, becoming a lawyer. How did you actually approach that? Did you pass it the first time you took it? Or?
Yeah, well, so there are two tests. There's the LSAT that you take to get into law school. And
Okay.
So I took that before I graduated from college.
Okay.
And Lord bless, I just did okay. And then after I graduated from law school, I took the bar, right? And the bar is very expensive to take, expensive to take.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Lord, like I can only afford to do this one time, right? I can't do this multiple times. Because my credit card has a limit, and I pretty much maxed it out the first time.
Right.
And so, the Lord bless, I passed the first time, and that was a very chaotic summer for me because I graduated from law school, took the bar, and got married all in the same summer, and then of course started my professional career.
Awesome. So during that time, you actually got married. Let's talk about how you and your wife actually met.
Well, my wife and I have never met. We've always known each other.
Right.
I mean, in general, that's the interesting story because my wife, mother and my mother were long time best friends. Like they have been probably good friends since the 70s. They actually, I think, started working together. My mother's a nurse and worked in the hospital setting. My wife's mother worked in a hospital setting. I believe that's how they got to know each other. Actually, they were working together like in the 70s.
Wow.
At University Hospital. And then they started working together. And then they ended up at the same church, Great Bethlehem Temple. I actually think my wife's mother, her family was from there, and she invited my mother.
Wow.
And so that's how they started going.
And then your mother invited my mother.
Yeah, my mother invited Michael's mother, and so that's how it shows just the power of one person.
Yeah,
and so that's how we kind of ended up growing up together, and we've always known each other. We've always been friends.
Right.
We did not seriously start talking until, and my wife.
Her story probably a little bit different.
Yeah, but my story is the true story. I was actually, when I was at Tougaloo, one thing that I appreciate about Tougaloo is that there are a lot of opportunities to do internships.
Right.
And so I always got to do internships during the summertime. And so I was at Ole Miss one summer, and my wife called. She said, "Hey, I'm just calling to check on you." And that's just kind of how we started talking. During my senior year, we got a little bit more serious. And my mother's belief is that I was about to lose all of my college friends. And so I wanted somebody that I knew would be kind of a stable foundation, and that's kind of how our relationship really, got a little bit more serious. And then, of course, we talked throughout law school, and once I graduated from law school, we decided to get married.
Wow!
And this year we'll be married 15 years.
That's awesome. Now, did y'all's mothers know that y'all were talking during the time that y'all were talking, or did they have some kind of inkling? Because my mother-in-law and my mother, they always say, "Oh, we knew it before y'all was even talking." So,
well, I think they were actually a little strange because we were so close. We grew up together. It was almost a brother and sister relationship,
right?
And so it was. I think it was pleasantly surprising, for them that we were talking. But I think the flip side of it is when you marry somebody that you know,
absolutely,
you know their families. There's really not that. In most marriages, there's a period of transition.
Right.
You're getting to know their person, and you're getting to know their family. Our families were already well acquainted and stuff, and so that helped a whole lot.
Awesome. And so transitioning after you got out of college, where did you start working? Initially, after you passed the bar and got that behind you?
Well, my first job right out of law school, I worked at a place called Mission First Legal Aid Office, which was essentially a nonprofit legal aid office. So I provided legal aid advice and attorney representation to low-income individuals. And so I did that for a while. Then I was hired to work for the federal courts here in Jackson.
Okay.
And I did that for a while. One of my favorite jobs because they send you to an academy. Because part of my job, I was 25 and I had a badge and a gun.
Oh, so like a police training academy.
Yeah, they send you, you're not a police officer, but there is because it's considered law enforcement.
Right.
You do go through a literally training academy where you learn to shoot, you learn, self-defense. They incorporate all of that with the other aspects of the job, because my job was to prepare what they call pre-sentence report.
Right.
And that's when a person has been convicted of a crime in federal court. You basically look at their background and you say, Judge, this is this person's background, to help the judge appreciate how they may have ended up in that position.
Right.
And then you also look at the law. And so there was a legal aspect, because you're looking at the law. What was the crime they pled to? What was, the statute? How much time are they facing? And you also look at their background to help the judge try to formulate what should be an appropriate sentence in that case. And so sometimes you would have to go out to people's houses and things of that nature. And that's why you had a badge and a gun to, be able to protect yourself and do whatever was necessary to fulfill that job duties.
Absolutely. So transitioning from there, you actually at some point got the idea that, hey, I don't want to, just necessarily work for someone else, but I think that I could be successful starting my own company. How did that take place, or what were the thoughts that went into that?
Well, I jokingly tell people, when I got tired of steady pay and good benefits, I decided to go and work for myself, because there is a transition. A lot of people didn't understand it. I was young. I was working for the federal government.
Now, how old were you when you started?
I think I was maybe 26 or 27. When I started my business. And it was interesting, because I was working for the federal government. My wife was working for the federal government. And, we both had good jobs. And I remember when people on my job heard that I was about to leave, there was a lady who, different ones would come and talk to me. And they would say, hey, you don't realize it, but you're young. You got a good job. You started when you were young. You'll be able to retire when you're 50. You got good benefits, stay here. Just stay here and enjoy life. And then I remember there was a white lady who worked with me, and she said, look, you owe it to yourself to try.
Yeah.
At the job I was on, they had put a lot into training. They had sent us to all of these different trainings. And,
right.
And so there was a mentality that says, hey, we have invested a lot in you. Mm-hmm. You owe us so much time.
Right.
And, there was one, I remember a white lady came and sit in my office, and she said, look, all you owe them is a day's work for a day's pay. Wow. But you owe yourself to take advantage and to pursue your dreams. And if something is in your heart, she said, you do not want to regret it, right?
Right.
She said, you're young.
Yeah.
While you're young, she said, look, go and try it. If it doesn't work, come back or do something else.
Right.
She said, but you're young enough to be able to essentially step out and to pursue your dreams and aspirations, and don't get stuck, on a job just because somebody tells you, hey, it's good money, it's stable money, if that's not really what's in your heart. Some of the best advice I ever could have got. And then I remember I was talking to an older black attorney, and he said, you owe it to yourself to try.
Right.
You don't want to reach the end of your life and have regrets and say, I wonder what could have or what would have. And so he said, you owe it to yourself to try. And so that's when I seriously started, thinking about, I'm going to do this. And it was interesting, because I remember I went and talked to a bank about a loan while I was still on my job. And I remember the banker said, well, you don't really have any clients. You don't really have any major connections. You probably want to stay on your job.
Right.
I'm so glad I didn't take that advice.
Yeah.
Because, we stepped out on faith. And I tell people, literally when I started my law office, I had no clients. My dad wasn't an attorney, my mom wasn't an attorney.
Right.
I had no real connections to the legal community. And so people did not expect that I would be successful.
Right.
But by the grace of God, here I am, and we have been doing this. I started my office in 2010. This is 2023, so we're sitting here 13 years later.
Wow.
And I literally started, when I started my office, we were in a one-bedroom apartment. We didn't have any children. My wife and I had been married for a little while, and so we had our bedroom and we had a closet. I started my office in a closet. That was my first office was in our closet. From there, I moved to Valley Street. From Valley Street, I moved to McDowell Road, and now we, Lord bless us, to purchase a building, in the downtown Jackson area. Yeah, it's just amazing, how life unfolds and how God works. So when I purchased this building, just driving by one day and saw this building, it was a vacant building. And I stopped and I said, well, that could be an office. And so I stopped and I got a call a realtor saying, I think I want to purchase this building. And so that's how we started.
Wow. That's amazing. And so, taking that leap of faith, why do you think that there are so many people who sit at jobs miserable, longing to do something that they're passionate about, but they kind of are apprehensive, or they listen to the negative voices, or they try to rationalize why it wouldn't work? Why do you think so many people stay stuck in that bubble?
I think it's the fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
Right. Even though I may hate where I'm at, I may dislike it, I know what to expect.
Right.
I know the first and the third, there's going to be a direct deposit to my bank account.
Right.
And I know what it's going to be. Right.
Right.
The thing about being in business for yourself, there are a lot of unknowns. I remember I was blessed that I had some wonderful mentors. And I remember there was an older attorney that told me, he said, look, some days you are going to be rolling in money. Mm-hmm. Then there are going to be some periods you go and it's like, do people even know my name? Mm-hmm. He said, so you've got to learn how to balance. When you get a large infusion of cash, learn to budget, because you settle a good case. Don't go and buy a new Mercedes every time,
right.
Or don't go and buy a bigger house every time you sell a decent case. Learn how to budget, learn how to live off so much and put money back. And I'll say this, that's a principle that has helped me, because what happened when I started my office, we decided, because at the time my wife and I didn't have any children, so we were blessed in that regard, and so we decided we would live off my wife's salary, and everything that I made for the first 3 years would be invested back into the company, every single dime.
Yeah.
And that allowed us to have a really good financial foundation for the company. And in working for yourself, another thing that one of my mentors told me, he said, look, when you work for yourself, you always want to have about 6 months of cash.
Yeah.
If you get hurt, if something happens, you can't wait.
Yeah.
You want to be able to continually take care of your family,
yeah.
And keep your business rolling. And so that was why we wanted to make sure we had enough cash. Right. And sometimes, my office doesn't always understand, because they know, hey, he settled a decent case, or he did this, but we're not blinking, we're not rolling. And, and what I let them know, look, if something happens and I cannot work for the next year, everybody in this building will still get a paycheck.
Wow.
Because of how we budget,
right.
And how we plan. And so I think it's really important for people, when you are in business for yourself, to make sure that you think long term, right? Because you know how sometimes you get a contract or you get a check. When you start getting checks, and they're sometimes pretty nice checks, you're like, whoa, this is, I've seen, literally, I've seen my business grow. Okay. So, you go from seeing cases settle for, a couple thousand to, you start seeing, literally, you see 6 figure,
right.
Come in, and then you see that 6 figures, and you're like, okay, well, we can do this and we can do that. But then what you have to wreck it. One thing that I appreciate, and I've been not always having money has been good for me.
Yeah, right.
Because I've not always had it. I know that there is a possibility
that you could get
that you could go back there, right?
Right?
And I tell people, I will never be poor by choice, right? I'm not gonna make choices that put me in the poverty house,
right?
And so one thing that it has helped me do, is learn how to budget, learn how to balance. And I can say this: if you look at my lifestyle, you're not gonna know whether I have $50 in the bank or 500,000.
Right.
Because I've learned how to budget. I've learned how to think long term, and I think a lot of people, when they have success in business, they don't know how to think long term. Because I remember there was an attorney. I was sitting in court, and he was just talking to me, and he was saying, look, he was talking about the practice of law. He said, look, there was one time that I was doing really, really well. He said I was making $300,000. Every year, pretty much consistently.
Right.
He said something happened, and I started. It hurt. My business was hurt, and I went from making $300,000 to $100,000. He said $100,000 is good money, but when you're used to making $300,000, you feel like you're in the part. He feels like. And so what he encouraged me. He said, look, never think that because money is rolling in a certain way, it's always going to be like that, right?
Absolutely.
And so he says, learn how to live at a level that you can be comfortable. Even when we were purchasing our first house, I remember And I think that's why it's so important for young people to have older people in their life, to be a voice of reason, a voice of wisdom. And so when I was purchasing my first house, I had never bought a house, and I didn't know anything about a house. And so, he's no longer with us, but Deacon Dunny Davis.
Yeah.
Everybody knew he knew construction.
Right.
And so I asked him and Deacon Finley if they would go look at houses with me. And they did. And I remember we were just talking, and they told me something. They said, Damon, you're married, your wife may get pregnant. And after she becomes pregnant, there may become a choice that y'all may decide it may not be good for her to work, or health reasons may happen, and both of y'all may not be able to work.
Right.
And they gave me some advice. They said, if you will buy your house based off one income, even when you have two incomes, you will never struggle to pay your house note.
Wow.
Best advice I ever could have gotten. And so our first house and the house we lived in there, we never bought a house that we could not pay off one income.
Wow.
And so the house, our old house and the house we live in now, if I could no longer practice law, my wife could still pay the house note off her salary.
Wow.
If my wife was not working, I could pay our house note off what I make.
Wow.
Because of that, our house note has never been behind.
Wow.
Ever been behind. And so little things like that. There was on my job when I was working, there was an older white gentleman, and he told me something. He said, Damon, he said, you're young. Go ahead and buy a house. He says, and this is why it's important to buy a house when you're young. He says, you don't want to be paying for a house with your Social Security check. He said, buy a house and purpose in your mind. He said, even if you if you buy a house when you're 25, 30, he says you can purpose in your mind that I'm going to have this house paid off by the time I retire. Right. If your house is paid off when you retire, you can do anything and be comfortable. Because for most people, your house note is your biggest payment. Is your biggest expense. And so that was one of the reasons we went ahead and purchased a house. So advice like that, and even, the Lord bless us to, build a house last year, but my house should be paid out by the time I'm 50.
Right.
Right. And so, little things like that, just planning, because, I don't want to be 60 and still having to go to work, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to be 55 and still having to go to work.
Right.
I don't want to be 50 and still having to go to work, right? I'm young now, so I'm gonna serve my sentence now. I'm gonna do my time now.
Right.
But and once you have kids, you realize how kids change everything, right?
Yeah.
Like my kids take all my money now.
Right.
Right. They do. My kids take all my money. But my goal is when my kids graduate from college, right? If I want to go work at Walmart and be a greeter at Walmart, I want to have my house paid off, and I want to be able to say, hey, show me your receipt. I want that to be the extent of stress at my life, right? I don't want to still be trying to, pay off this and do that. And that goes back to, I remember even when I was in law school, one of our professors told us something. They said, you can live like a broke law student now and be able to enjoy your paycheck when you start making it.
Right.
Or you can live like an attorney now, and when you start practicing law, you will not be able to live like an attorney because you're going to have to pay for when you were a law student.
Right. And so two things that I picked up that you kind of drilled in me that I just thought about. Number one, when you started your business, you had a plan. You didn't just quit because you were tired of work. Some people quit jobs without, you're like, what are you going to do? Like, I don't know anything but this, but you had a plan. And then the second thing that you said is that you had mentors. There were people who you took advice from. And I think that those things are so important. How important is it to have a plan and to have mentors to help you along the way?
And let's talk about the plan first.
Right.
I think it's important not just to have the plan, but to have a realistic plan.
Right.
And I had a wife, right? And so I think you have to look at your circumstances. If you have a family, I don't think it's wise to just quit your job without a plan. Right?
Absolutely.
Like, now, if you live at home with your parents, you're not married, you're not planning on getting married.
Yeah.
You can do whatever, right?
You can take that risk.
Right. But when you have obligations,
and
so you have to have a plan. And so I knew that I had a work ethic. I knew that I would work hard, right? And I was willing to do what was necessary until my business got up and running, right? Having, and people don't realize that having a business is more than just having a business card and a website.
Yeah.
Right. Having a business says, look, this is a business to me is it became like my baby.
Yeah.
And when you work for yourself, there are no hours. Like, I didn't leave because it was 5 o'clock.
Right.
Right. I stayed. Especially when you're building a business starting off. If there was a client that wanted to hire me, whatever time you wanted to meet, I would meet you. So if you work to 5 and you need me to meet you at 5:30 or 6 o'clock, we will meet at 5:30 or 6 o'clock.
Right.
If you need me to meet on Saturday, we will meet on Saturday.
Right.
And so my plan was to work as hard as I could. And I would do stuff like I always knew I wanted to be a courtroom attorney. And so even when I did not necessarily have a case in court, I would go sit in court, right, and just see other attorneys argue cases. And this is the thing about it, right? Like if you hang out in a courthouse long enough with a suit and tie, eventually somebody's going to ask you, are you an attorney?
Right.
And you say, I am. And they say, well, what type of law do you practice? Well, what do you need? and then when they tell you what you need, oh, yes, that's something I can help you with. And that's literally how I build my business.
Right.
And then the other thing I did was there were people who would call other attorneys and they would say, hey, I need $5,000 to handle this case. And they would call me and they would say, how much do you charge? And I would say, how much do you have? Well, I don't have $5,000, but how much do you have? I have $1,000. I'll take, you know what? I'll take $1,000 deposit. Come see me. And, you know, and that's how you build, that's literally how you build your business. Like,
right.
I think a lot of times when you're in business, you have to understand where you're at. I'm at a place now, I've been doing this for 15 years. I have an established reputation.
Yeah.
People know me. I can charge what I want to charge.
Right.
And if you don't pay what if you don't want to pay what I charge, that's fine. You can go somewhere else.
Right.
I'm still going to be able to meet my obligations in my business and my house.
Right.
But when I first started off,
you couldn't do that.
You know, and so I knew I couldn't charge what other attorneys were charging. And so I would be selective with my pricing. I would charge less, but I would work so that even though I was charging less, you were getting the same quality of work.
Wow.
As if you had walked in an attorney's office and put $5,000 down.
Right.
And so once you do that and word gets out and people start telling their friends and their family, I've never really advertised, right? My referrals have came from word of mouth.
Right.
But I understand in order for that to work, I've got to do a good job.
You got to be good to people.
And so if you work, and you know, my plan, what was my plan? My plan was to work as hard as I could.
Yeah.
Right. And my plan was to deliver results. And so that has allowed me to grow my business. And so people at first, you know, people just trust you with the small car rigs. Well, that's
Right.
okay. I'm gonna get you every dollar I can from the small car rigs, and from you grow from the small car rigs. You know, I'm literally handling cases that have the potential to settle for millions of dollars, right? But it didn't start there, right? You would take things for less money than other attorneys, and you would handle cases. I don't really do speeding tickets now. It is not, you're going to pay me more
Right.
than the speeding ticket is worth.
Right.
And so I don't do speeding tickets. But when I started off, I would do a speeding ticket.
Yeah.
And I would go in there and argue a speeding ticket like other attorneys were arguing a murder case. Right? Because people see that in court.
Yeah.
And they'll say, I want that guy to handle a murder case. I want that guy to handle this car wreck case for me. And so my plan was to work. And another thing you mentioned about mentors.
Yeah.
Everybody needs somebody that's going to be a voice of experience, a voice of wisdom to help steer you.
Right.
So when I started off, I was in a building with some other attorneys, and that was invaluable for me because when I didn't know what to do, I could walk around. I could walk, you know, to the office and say, hey, you know, what do you think about this? Or what are your thoughts on that? And so I just think in any profession, and not just profession, I think you need professional mentors. I think you need spiritual mentors.
Yes.
I think you need family mentors. You know, people that'll say, hey, look, you know, this is what I can look at your life, and I can see qualities in you that make you a good husband that I would want to emulate in my life. And then I can go to that person and talk to that person. And so I think in every area, even, you know, as a father, I need people that can help me in my role as a father. So I think everybody needs mentors because
Absolutely.
I've never traveled down this road of success.
Right.
But somebody has.
Yeah, and you need accountability as well because you not only need people who are going to pat you on the back, sometimes you need people to help keep you in line. And so I think that's important too to look at in a mentor.
Everybody needs somebody that they can keep them in check. Right. Or have what I call a come to Jesus moment.
Right.
When we say, look, let's close the door. Let's step away from the crowd. And
Right.
like, look, you know, one of the things that I appreciate is like my wife, right?
Right.
everybody else will say you did a good job. Your wife will say, well, you were kind of long, or, you could have been a little bit clearer on this point, right? And so you need those people when everybody else is singing your praises.
Right.
People that say you did all right, but you could have done better. And next time, if you work on this will make you better.
And that makes you better. And so you being a young Black attorney, do you feel like we need more representation when it comes to being young Black African-American men, whether it's being an attorney? Sometimes we're in trouble, but sometimes we also need somebody to represent us that look like us, that understand us. How important is that, do you think?
Well, I think it's very important to have diversity at every level. And I am an advocate for diversity. And a lot of people don't understand that. A lot of people say, well, hey, that's gender politics, or you just want a person there because of their skin color, something like that. No, that's not what we mean, because you also want qualified individuals.
Right.
But the reality of matter is that your life experience shape how you think. They shape how you view life. And I think it's important to have people from the community that understand the needs of the community.
Yeah.
And this is the reality of the matter. The African American community, I believe, is in a dire strait, especially as it relates to the state of our young Black men.
Yeah.
The reality of the matter is our young Black women are excelling. They're doing excellent. Our young Black women are buying houses now by themselves. When you look, one of the largest percentages of people getting PhDs now are African American women.
Wow.
Like they're going to school. They're doing phenomenal things. But you have to sometimes drive by street corners to see our young men.
Wow.
That's problematic to me.
Right.
Our young Black women are going to college, getting educated, becoming successful, and our young Black men are going to prison. That is going to create an imbalance in our society. Right? Because those beautiful, intelligent, successful young women, they deserve to marry a man that's just as successful.
I want to transition a little bit into fatherhood, because you're raising two young ladies now. I used to call them kids, but they're becoming young ladies now. How important is that to you as a father? Not just being there, but training them, and what are you trying to instill in them as young ladies?
Well, one thing that I am hopefully raising them to do is to have value and self-respect for themselves. I think that's so important for our young ladies to understand who they are, and to hopefully have a standard of who they should be as a lady, and a standard of what they should expect from a man.
Right.
And I think that is extremely important. And one of the things that I want my children to do is to see good, healthy depictions of a normal family.
Right.
One thing that I have tried to make sure that my children are not exposed to dysfunction.
Right.
Because what I've learned is when children are exposed to dysfunction, they don't see it as dysfunction. They see it as normal.
Right.
Right. And so then they grow up and they think that certain things are normal.
Right.
I never wanted my children to think a man hitting a woman was normal. So I don't hit my wife. I don't, talk demeaning to my wife, because I want them to know how a man is supposed to treat them, how a man is supposed to interact with them. And so one of the things that I'm doing is, is hopefully being a good example of a male figure, and then also just training them to be independent, right?
Yeah.
Like my desire is that they will hopefully grow up and marry somebody wonderful, and they'll have a wonderful life. But I also want them to be in a position, if Mr. Wonderful never comes along, they'll still be able to take care of themselves. They'll little things. I want them to be able to take care of themselves and not to be in a position where they would be taken advantage of, by somebody that does not have pure intent. Yeah. And so just training them to be able to think for themselves. I think it is so important for us to train our young people to be able to think critically. And this goes back to even, my concern about our young men. And so just teaching them to think critical. I heard somebody say this, and I use this. There are two types of mistakes. We all make mistakes.
Right.
There are mistakes that you can recover from, and there are mistakes that you can't recover from.
Right.
Trying to help them appreciate the consequences of their actions so that they don't make a mistake that they cannot recover from.
Right. And so another thing that I think is a very vital part of your life is that you're in ministry as well. Let's just briefly talk about how your call to ministry came about. Did you ever think that you would be in ministry, or did that something that just kind of happened overnight?
Well, I think there was something in me that always knew that there was a desire to serve. Uh, but I'll say this: it was actually just working in the church,
Yeah.
right, that started. I remember years ago. He's gone on, Deacon Wilson. When I was in law school, Deacon Herman Wilson. Everybody's been around knows
Right.
Deacon Wilson. Deacon Wilson was walking out of the fellowship hall, and I was walking in.
Right.
And you know where the visitors, the little information desk is.
Yeah.
We passed each other in that area, and he called me. He said, "Brother Damon, I need you to step into the principal's office." And he called me. He said, "Look, you're in law school. The Lord is blessing you." He said, "The Lord is blessing you. You're doing good." He said, "But you need to be doing more for the Lord."
Mm-hmm.
He says, "You need to be doing more for the Lord." And he says, "You can start by teaching Sunday school, right? Like I could use you in Sunday school. You could help young people." And so that's how I started. Literally, that's how I started.
Wow.
Deacon Wilson made me start teaching Sunday school.
Wow.
And so then from Sunday school started, and I really enjoyed, I highly enjoyed teaching Sunday school. And so from teaching Sunday school to then working kind of with the young people's department, and then it just evolved, from there. But I definitely think just working, right?
Yeah.
I didn't have a call to ministry. I had a work to ministry.
Yeah,
right.
Right.
It's just right to the matter.
Right.
And Deacon Wilson helped me with that. And so I one of the things that I appreciate is the older people, who saw something in me and said, "You know what, I'm gonna make you do more."
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so from there, you're now pastoring a church. What is one of the things that you've learned while pastoring? Because, to be able to preach and then go back home and you not have to worry about the additional responsibilities that comes with a congregation is one thing. But then to actually have to bear the burden of others after you've preached, you actually have to help people become, more Christ-like and help them with diverse problems and situations that they have. What is one of the things that you've learned while you've been pastoring?
Well, pastoring is literally like a 24/7 job.
Yeah.
And like you say, it's one thing to preach and be done, but when you pastor, you finish one service thinking about the next service.
Yeah.
I mean, like literally, literally leave one service thinking about the next service. And so you're always, not only just the next service, like, what do we need to be doing as a church? Or this person was out, like, is there something that I need to do? And so it's constantly always on your mind. And then this is the thing too. There is a burden that comes with being concerned about people.
Yeah.
Right? Especially when you realize, like, at the end of the day, my job is to help these people make it to heaven.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I can't mess that up. Like,
Right.
I cannot mess that up. And so there is a lot of pressure with, like, look, I'm genuinely trying to help these people. Right? And not only that, right, it affects every area, because I can't be effective if my family life is where it's not supposed to be. There are other things going on. And so, I mean, there are a lot of dynamics that go into leading people that I'm not certain you really appreciate until you're in that position. Right. Pastoring to me is like marriage.
Yeah.
You may have good intent. You may think but you don't really know until you're in it. Like,
right.
You can have been around it.
Yeah.
You can have been exposed to it, but you don't know what it's like until you are in it.
Right.
Right. And so once you get in it, just, seeing the needs of people and just saying, what can I do to help meet those needs?
Yeah. Now, you are an extremely hard worker, as we've discussed. We talked about your work life. We talked about your ministry. We talked about, family, but you also like to have some fun, but you do love to travel. What is some of the best places that you've ever visited?
Oh, we love to travel. My wife and I and some of my friends, the Virgin Islands is beautiful. That's the place that you go and you feel like you're on vacation, right?
Yeah.
You just lay out on the beach and do nothing. And I'll say this: I think travel, especially for couples, young couples, are so important. My wife and I were talking even before we had kids. We would take the week. We had like a 3-day weekend like this. We would go to Atlanta. We would go to Dallas. Just go out there and just get away. Now, because we have children, it just requires a little little bit more coordination, but we still love to travel. I love doing things like, as a matter of fact, this is our 15-year anniversary.
Wow.
We're going to Australia this year.
Yeah.
Right. I wanted to say, what's something that we could do that's different, right?
Yeah.
Travel, to me, it just helps you appreciate life, right? And one of the things that I looked at, I was reading somewhere, and they were saying one of the things that people reflect on at the end of their life is things that they did that really, that really affected their life. So, buying a new suit, it's not going to really change my life, right? It's not going to, 10 years from now, it's not going to really do anything. But I still have these memories, right? And I tell people, one thing that I enjoy is sitting around a table, and when somebody says, I'm going to New York, I love being able to say, oh, by the way, this is the restaurant you got to go to, right? Or this is where you want to stay at. I enjoyed that.
Right. I think we've done a couple of trips together. We went to California, but one of probably the most memorable things that we've done together is our family got selected to go on Family Feud. Talk about that a little bit and how that experience actually came about.
Well, that was literally one of the most interesting experiences of my life. Just the opportunity to interact with Steve Harvey, and be there. And this is the thing that I appreciated. Okay, so people see Steve Harvey on TV, very successful, but when you see him in person, he's a person just like the rest of us. Yeah. And I think sometimes in our mind, we come up with these idols. We even do that spiritually. We think David and all of these people, Paul, these were people just like us, right? And they became great. And just like they became great, there is something in all of us. And so just being able to interact with Steve Harvey and see him and to know, that a person that has been this successful, a person that is this well known, but he's still a person, right. And so to me, that was very encouraging to know that just like he became successful, there's nothing different between him and the rest of us.
Yeah.
Right. If you will work what's in you, work your God, and he talked about, comedy is his God-given gift, right? He worked what was in him. There's something that God has given all of us. Find out what's in you and work it. Right, work it and let that be your key to success. And so that's one thing that I really enjoyed about just being there in Family Feud, just the opportunity to be exposed to somebody like that. And then of course being there with family. We're a close family, and just the opportunity to do things. And I will say this: your successes and accomplishments in life are only meaningful if you're celebrating them with people that matter to you.
Right.
And I think that's why family is so important. There are some people who look at your post, they don't really like your post. Right. But there are some people who genuinely, like, your accomplishments become their accomplishments. Right. Your failures become their failures. And I think it's so very important to travel through life with people who will celebrate with you, who will laugh with you, and who will cry with you.
Awesome. All right, man. Well, we're getting ready to wrap it up, but before we leave, we have a few rapid fire questions. Now, Damon does not know what I'm about to ask him, so he's gonna just answer these off the top of his head. We do this at the end of every podcast, just to get a little bit more insight about the individual that we're talking to. So, Damon, are you ready for your rapid fire question? We got about 4 of them for you. Number 1. So you got 2 daughters, right? Which one of your daughters is more like you, and which one is more like your wife, would you say, in your opinion?
Well, I think Kelsey is more like me, and more that she's kind of independent, and she kind of does her own thing. Yeah. Kylie is the social butterfly. Yeah. I think she gets that from my wife.
She never meets a stranger. She's always got the smile on her face. Kelsey gonna kind of try to figure you out a little bit before she crack a smile. So yeah, I can see that. All right. What was your favorite travel destination that you've been to? Out of the name a few places that you've been to, but what was your favorite?
Well, we have literally gone all over. We've been to D.C., New York, Las Vegas. We've been to California a couple times. The Virgin Islands is literally one of the Virgin Islands, when we really just want to relax and just do nothing, just lay on the beach, you go to the Virgin Islands. Now, when I want to see stuff and do stuff, New York, because there's always something to do. And then Some people don't like to travel with us because this is why. I don't believe you travel and eat at restaurants that are in your home, your city.
Yeah.
And I don't believe you travel and stay in the hotel. I like to get up early and go and see the world.
Yeah.
And so New York is one of those places you can get up. I remember my wife and I one time we went to Times Square at like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and it was thousands of people out there.
Wow.
So just, I love, if I really want to do stuff, New York is the place to go.
What is, many times when people visit Mississippi, where we are now, one of the questions they ask is, what is the best restaurant in Mississippi? Now, Damon is also, one of those people, like, he knows all of the best spots. He'll tell you about these spots. I call him when there's somebody who asks about, soul food or, where do you get the best fish? Damon knows all those spots. So, Damon, where is one of the best restaurants in Mississippi?
Well, it depends on what you're in the mood for. Now, I'll say this. Food in Mississippi is like its own culture.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so it depends on what you have an appetite for. I tell people in Mississippi, if you know which gas station to go to, you can get a good meal.
Yeah.
I know from, like, I had court all over the state.
Yeah.
And so you kind of develop like little spots that people, locals tell you about. Literally, there are certain gas stations that I can tell you that they would rival a home cooked meal from the finest restaurants. Literally, like there are certain gas stations.
Yeah.
I like mom and pop restaurants.
Yeah.
Like, I like different things. Like, I like going to Big Apple Inn and getting smoked. That's not something you're not going to get into it, right?
Some people want to know what is a smoke. So tell them what a smoke is.
So a smoked is, essentially, it is a red roast sausage that has been mashed down, for lack of a better word, and they cook it on the grill. And it's amazing. There are just certain things that if you know where to get them from Mississippi, it's just different. And so I just like eating a kind of off the beaten path kind of restaurants. Now, there are places, there's fine dining. My wife and I, we like going to Coastal Prime.
Yeah.
I mean, they have a nice meal.
Where would you go for soul food?
Well, Mama Hamels has good, but there's a place in Jackson called Mama Sweet Eats and Treats. I go there sometimes for lunch. I mean, it's literally like family business. Mama Sweet Eats and Treats. They have amazing soul food.
Wow.
Yes.
Jim, we're going to have to try that. All right. So my final question for you, Damon, if you could choose any other career field to go into now, you've been an attorney for a long time. If you had not been an attorney, what probably would be the next choice on your list if you were not an attorney?
Well, based on what I know now, my next goal in life, I'm gonna go into real estate.
Okay.
Right. I have really enjoyed even purchasing this building, and I do have one rental property. Real estate is an amazing venture, and then it offers, you can make income while having so much flexibility.
Right.
Right. It's a wonderful way to build wealth. And so I think my next business venture will be investing more at whatever point that I start really wrapping up my practice of law and decide to walk away from the practice of law. My next business venture would definitely be real estate.
Awesome. And so, we've talked about all of these different things. So before we sign off, I want you to kind of talk to someone who may be aspiring to be an attorney. They want to become a judge one day. What would you say to that individual? And then the second piece of that is perhaps they're not wanting to become a judge or an attorney specifically, but perhaps they want to start a business or they want to become a business owner. What would you say to encourage them to make those next strides?
Well, I would tell people, follow your dreams in your heart. Be willing to put in the work and the effort to make your dreams become reality. Do your research. Find out what is it going to take for me to fulfill my dreams and go after it. And this is whether you want to be an attorney, a judge, or anything. Come up with a life plan for yourself. Ask yourself, at the end of my life, what do I want my obituary to say at my funeral? And work backwards. Right? Start at the end and work backwards, right? And what do I have to do to build the life so that when I close my eyes, I'll have no regrets.
Right.
I'll have no sorrows. And think about, what is it that I am going to have to do? And then be willing to put in the work. Right? Be willing to invest in yourself. Nobody's going to invest in you and until you invest in yourself. Celebrate your accomplishments, but also recognize your shortcomings. Be your own best encourager and also be your own worst critic.
Wow.
Right? You got to do all of that in order to be successful.
Well, guys, this has been such an intriguing interview. It's been full of information that can help us to achieve our goals from somebody who's actually done these things. Damon is a testament, that hard work, passion, and faith, all those things mixed together can help you to become who you want to be and to be effective in whatever sector you're working in. So again, I want to say thank you to Damon, and thank you all so much for tuning in for the Wall Street Image Podcast. If you're watching by way of YouTube, make sure that you hit the like button and leave us a comment about something that was said today that inspired you. Talk about your career field. What career field are you in? And make sure that you subscribe and stay a part of the channel so that you can know when we're posting more content like this. Listen, we got a lot more stuff like this to come. We want you to be a part of it. So thanks again for watching, and we will talk to you guys very soon.